The last debate of this year should have equitable negative ground to allow for a proper debate over the merits of the plan. But the affirmative violates this by only reducing one specific weapon system out of a multitude of wide variety of weapon systems that we provide to India, and specifically on ballistic missile defenses. The first argument they meet against the W-spec argument that we made at the bottom of the T-flow was that their solvency evidence is specific about IAWDS. But A, this is a question that begets solvency, because there are zero cards on the affirmative side either that is reverse causal to the literature of IAWDS specifically that it can solve for their case. But B, a lot of their evidence is about ballistic missile defense and counterforcing as a whole, which means that if you believe on the case flow that they aren't able to solve or that they aren't specific, you should reject this argument. But furthermore, they claim that our interpretation of one weapon system overlimits every soft left affirmative. Obviously, that's untrue. Things like the war in Yemen include multiple weapon systems as defined by a broad category of offensive weapons. Things like Bahrain require a signaling argument, which means that stopping one weapon system wouldn't stop it, which means that no soft left affirmative would ever get overlimited by our interpretation here. The third argument was that you should evaluate plan text in a vacuum. But this makes no sense when their plan text specifically is talking about the IAWDS system instead of ballistic missile defenses as a whole. And the last argument is about reasonability. But that inspires judge intervention when there's no interpretation for what reasonability means. And the biggest impact in this round about why you're voting on the specific specific weapon system being really abusive is that they have proven the abuse on the disadvantage flow for us. But now let's go on to the counterplan. We're not going for this counterplan. We're going to concede the permutation, but their threat in theory is a reason to reject the argument, not the team. Please go to the China disad. Arms sales to India reassure them of American commitment. These sales specifically mean the capital feels protected. And if they're right about case, that Modi specifically wants IAWDS because that's the only thing that holds up their counterforcing shield, then stopping that sale would be huge to let China invade India and start a global war. And this turns the case because the plan leads to a perception of abandonment. India would be net more adventurous and develop more weapons. See Fin 10. A relationship with India would do more to avert nuclear war than arms control treaties. In India that would look on Washington as a protector against China would be more likely to heed American calls for restraining nuclear weapons. And strong relations let the US check an Indo-Pak conflict and mediate a strike. But they're the reason this strike hasn't happened yet. Perkovich in 14. The challenge for Indians and Pakistanis and the US government, which inevitably would be impelled to mediate a conflict, is steps to prevent major terrorist attacks. The US needs to be more forthcoming in sharing intelligence. Indian leaders need to correct long-standing inadequacies in the intelligence and counterterrorism organization. Cooperation must occur. If there will be any chance of mitigating risk of escalation, stakes cannot be higher. The first few arguments they make is that the uniqueness outweighs because the status quo is deterring China. But that's not true. First is that US-India relations are high now because of Trump, Chalfant 20. Trump cheered his relationship with Modi and declared the partnership stronger than ever before. Trump and Modi rooted the new defense cooperation. A comprehensive trade agreement remains elusive. Trump had said and insisted tremendous progress has been made. The U.S. signed 2 memorandums, mental health and drug products. Trump touted a deal to purchase U.S. helicopters. Trump has spoken optimistically about trade, but tempered expectations. Teams have made tremendous progress on a comprehensive trade agreement and optimistic we can reach a deal. Remarks came after an expanded bilateral meeting. And relations with India are Goldilocks. Standing against China is the impetus for expanding cooperation. Fontaine 19. Ties with India are a positive outlier. The improving relationship stems from Trump-articulated priorities. Prioritizing the China challenge provides an underlying rationale for greater alignment with India. Trump meshes with India's approach on other issues as well. The administration criticism of China's One Belt, One Road mirrors Indian concerns, and both share security cooperations with countries. Some previous pressures have dissipated. Trump's withdrawal from Paris means India's environmental practices no longer rank high. Washington's drive to sanction Iran will implicate India. Defense ties remain a high point, remain more potential. Now, the next argument they give is that there's no weapons linked to the disadvantage because long-range BMDs check. 1, this is abuse for topicality because obviously there's no specific literature saying that only IAWDs are specific to China invading. But secondly, that is a solvency takeout on the case law. There is zero explanation of why a short-range 25-kilometer-long IAWDS system is specifically key to counter Pakistan. And similarly, if they're right that it is, that would be specifically key to stop Chinese aggression. Furthermore, the next few arguments are that there's no links, so please go to the link debate there. A strengthened security relationship with India ensures future joint development. Arms sales are key. Madan 19. There has been steady progress in the U.S.-India relationship. Both have seen the other a crucial role in Asia strategy. Senior officials meet regularly, facilitate greater interoperability and technology transfer. The U.S. and India have operationalized the LEMOA. India started receiving helicopters with beat Russian offering and deploying American equipment in the Indian Ocean. Washington has approved the sale of drones. The two countries in talks for further deals. Washington is playing the role Moscow used to India. Problems have arisen from the approach in Afghanistan. Moscow has deepened relations with Beijing, broadened them with Islamabad, and taken a neutral stance during the India-Pakistan crisis. A potential issue coming down the pike: India's future telecommunication system, carded systems. And BMD cooperation specifically is key to deepen defense cooperation with the U.S. It's also key to effective Indian ballistic missile defense systems, NIDU-7. Support to the U.S. BMD planes was a win-win situation. Besides getting closer to Washington, India's strategic objectives would be well served. This could pave the way for deepening of defense cooperation with the U.S. The government's decision to integrate missile defense into India's nuclear posture, the clearest signal on New Delhi's intent came where specific reference was made to expand the dialogue on missile defense. A major offshoot was U.S. interest to share missile defense technology with India. Notwithstanding vast progress in relations, India appears to be resident and take a firm decision because of cost and nature of missile threats is complex with areas to cover the prospect of a nuclear arms race. And the key internal link is certainty. Other issues don't represent a threat to the long-term viability of the alliance, but the plan shreds the limits of our relationship by confirming India's fears about the unreliability of U.S. promises. Smith-19. Despite recent hiccups, Modi's first term was productive, advancing the U.S. partnership. There's an sense of unease in Delhi, fueled by uncertainty about Trump's objectives and reliability. China and the U.S. have overcome hesitation because Washington has bent over backwards to establish Trump carve-out exemption, treat India on par with close allies, has been avoided being transactional. Cooperation should be easier. Formal arrangements have significantly diminished, but the partnership has limits. Next up, the IWT key arguments frame this through recency. Our link evidence makes a structural claim that arms are key. If we win that new arms are the key to Modi's perception, the relations debate is all about credibility, especially when they've made an argument about India striking Pakistan. We need to make a credible presence to rescind that. The last few arguments are about the thumpers argument. They have made no defensive arguments against impactee about the in China invading India, which means that if that happens, you can view it as 100% probability of happening and checking the same impact as the case. The last argument is the second last argument is the thumpers citing North Korea and Japan, but those cards say zero about China and what their intentions are. Furthermore, China is only going to invade a country we don't support, which is literally what the plan does instead of F-35s or North Korea and Japan. And the last argument they read that they sent out in the email chain is literally proof that it is literally uniqueness for the disad. And furthermore, they say China is nice, but China's revisionist. Tell us 8. Sino-American security competition into over the long term. It would be shocking if China, in contrast to every great power in history and its past behavior during preeminence, chose not to utilize its power to advance its interest, status, and influence. Beijing's interest is a non-threatening profile as a precondition for power. The structure of the system would compel China to behave like any great power, and it's specifically true for the Indian Ocean. Cooper 18. China's increased military presence in the Indian Ocean following traditional path of providing power. A new base in Djibouti provides power projection bolstered by its assets to ports in Bangladesh, Burma, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. There's no question created with dual-use purposes. There we go. Now, absent U.S. defense, these BMDs, if they're right on case that they're crucial, would obviously be the same reason for why China is able to invade India. If they sense weakness in India, that means that they're able to invade, which would turn the entirety of the case, especially as it means that they might front a two-front war between Pakistan and China. In the next speech, you also have to hold the affirmative to a high degree of solvency and IAWDS specificity, which they won't be able to do. And for these reasons, we urge a negative ballot.